an enslaved artisan's masterpiece. Its hidden message sparks a revolution. The year was 1852, and Willow Creek Plantation lay nestled along the rolling hills of eastern Virginia, where the James River wound lazily through fields of golden tobacco. The air was thick with the scent of earth and leaves, and the days stretched long under the watchful eye of the sun. Colonel Elias Hawthorne, a widower in his 50s, owned the land, a vast estate passed down through generations, worked by nearly 200 souls held in bondage. Hawthorne was a stern man, respected in the county for his fine manners and his unyielding belief in the order of things. He rarely raised his voice, but his word was law. Overseeing the daily toil was Mr. Harlan Brooks, a broad-shouldered man of 40 with a weathered face and a quick temper. Brooks had come to Willow Creek 10 years earlier, hired for his firm hand and his knowledge of the crop. He lived in a modest house near the quarters with his only son, Elias Brooks, named after the colonel in hopes of favor. Young Elias was 19 now, tall and lean like his father, but with a quieter spirit. His eyes, a soft gray, often lingered on the horizons beyond the fields, dreaming of a world he had only read about in stolen books. Among the enslaved was a young woman named Lila Monroe. At 18, she was known throughout the quarters for her skillful hands. Born on the plantation, Layla had a gift for needlework, turning scraps of cloth into beautiful quilts that adorned the big house during gatherings. Her mother, Mama Ruth, had taught her the old patterns brought from Africa: old stars, flying geese, log cabins, stitched with care and whispered stories. Layla's skin was the warm color of rich soil, her eyes dark and thoughtful, and her smile, though rare in the presence of white folks, could light the dimmest cabin at night. Layla worked in the sewing room of the big house most days, mending linens and crafting gifts for the colonel's visitors. It was there, in the quiet afternoons when the house slaves moved about their tasks, that young Elias first noticed her truly. He had grown up seeing the enslaved people as part of the landscape, faceless hands picking tobacco or tending the gardens. But Layla was different. She hummed soft melodies while she worked, tunes that carried echoes of freedom from distant lands. One sweltering July day, Elias rode out to check the fields on his father's orders. The overseer was away, dealing with a sick horse, so the task fell to him. As he passed the willow grove near the river, a shady spot where the field hands sometimes rested during breaks, he spotted a group gathered under the drooping branches. Laughter floated on the breeze, light and free in a way he had never heard from them before. Curious, he dismounted and tied his horse, approaching quietly. There was Layla, sitting on a fallen log with a few younger children around her. She was showing them how to weave crowns from willow branches, her fingers deft and gentle. "And this one," she said softly, placing a crown on a little boy's head, "is for the king of the river. He'll watch over you when you dream." The children giggled, and Elias felt a pull in his chest. He stepped forward, and the laughter stopped at once. The children scattered like startled birds, leaving Layla alone. "Miss Layla," he said, tipping his hat awkwardly. He had never spoken to her directly before. She stood quickly, eyes lowered. "Young Master Elias, I didn't mean no harm, just keeping the young ones quiet." He shook his head. "No harm at all. It's nice. The crowns, I mean." She glanced up then, surprised by his tone. For a moment, their eyes met, and something unspoken passed between them, a flicker of recognition, as if two souls had brushed against each other in the vast emptiness of the plantation world. From that day, Elias found excuses to pass by the sewing room. He would bring small things, a spool of thread from town, or a ribbon fallen from a visitor's dress, claiming they were for the colonel's needs. Layla accepted them with quiet thanks, her cheeks warming under his gaze. In the evenings, when the fields were quiet and the lanterns glowed in the quarters, Layla would sit with Mama Ruth and the others, stitching by firelight. "That young master been looking your way," Mama Ruth warned one night, her voice low. "Best keep your eyes down, child. Nothing good comes from that." But Layla's heart had already begun to stir. Elias was not like his father, not harsh, not quick with the whip. He spoke kindly, asked about her patterns as if they mattered. One evening, As twilight painted the sky in purples and golds, Elias waited by the willow grove. Lila, sent to fetch water from the spring, found him there. "I didn't mean to startle you," he said softly. "I just wanted to talk, away from prying eyes." She hesitated, bucket in hand. "Talking ain't safe, Master Elias." "Just Elias," he corrected, a small smile breaking through. "Please." They sat beneath the willows, the river murmuring nearby. He told her of books he had read, tales of far-off places, of heroes and adventures. She shared stories her grandmother had passed down, of stars that guided lost travelers home. As the weeks turned, their meetings became a secret rhythm. Stolen moments under the willows, where words flowed like the river, tentative at first, then deeper. Elias spoke of his doubts about the plantation, whispers he had heard in town about folks up north who believed slavery wrong. Layla listened, her heart aching with a hope she dared not name. But secrets on a plantation are fragile things. One day, Harlan Brooks noticed his son's horse tied too often near the grove. Suspicion crept in like fog from the river. And in the sewing room, Layla began a new quilt, a grand one for the Colonel's upcoming birthday. Patterns of stars and paths, stitched with careful intention. Little did anyone know, those stitches held more than beauty. They held whispers of something greater. As autumn leaves began to fall, the bond between Elias and Layla grew, fragile as a willow branch yet strong as the roots beneath. But in a world built on division, such bonds carried danger, a danger that would soon threaten everything they held dear. Autumn deepened over Willow Creek Plantation, painting the tobacco fields in shades of amber and rust. The air carried the sharp scent of curing leaves from the barns, and the days grew shorter, filled with the urgent rhythm of harvest. Colonel Hawthorne walked the rows with Harlan Brooks, nodding approval at the heavy yield. "A fine season," the colonel declared, his voice carrying the weight of satisfaction. "The Lord has blessed us." In the big house, preparations began for the colonel's 60th birthday celebration, an event that would draw neighbors from across the county, planters, merchants, even a state senator rumored to attend. Fine china was polished, silver gleamed, and the kitchen bustled with preparations for a feast. The centerpiece of the gifts, the colonel had announced, would be a new quilt for the master bedroom, crafted by the plantation's most skilled seamstress, Lila Monroe. Layla received the commission with a deep curtsy and quiet words of gratitude. But inside, her heart raced. This was no ordinary quilt. For weeks she had sketched patterns in her mind, drawing on stories Mama Ruth whispered after dark, tales of escape, of signals passed in cloth, of quilts that once hung on lines to guide runaways north. Patterns that looked innocent to white eyes, but spoke volumes to those who knew how to read them. She chose deep indigo for the background, the color of midnight skies, and bright scraps of red, gold, and white for the stars and trails. The design would be called Crossroads to Freedom, though she would never speak that name aloud. Each block held meaning, a tumbling blocks pattern for confusion left behind, flying geese pointing north, a wagon wheel for the journey ahead. Hidden among the stitches, tiny knots and uneven threads would form symbols only the initiated could see: arrows, safe houses, warnings of danger. Elias watched her work whenever he could slip into the sewing room unnoticed. He brought her small offerings: a thimble from town, a length of crimson silk rescued from a torn gown. Their fingers brushed as she accepted them, and each touch lingered a moment longer than necessary. "You're putting your whole soul into this one," he said one afternoon, leaning against the doorframe while the other house servants were busy elsewhere. Layla kept her eyes on her needle. "It's for the colonel's birthday. Has to be special." He stepped closer, lowering his voice. "It's more than that. I see it in the way you choose each piece. Like you're telling a story no one else can hear." She paused, needle suspended in midair. For the first time, she dared to meet his gaze fully. Some stories are too dangerous to tell with words. Elias felt the weight of her meaning settle over him. He had begun borrowing books from the colonel's library, volumes on law, history, even a hidden copy of a northern newspaper that spoke of abolitionists and growing unrest. The more he read, the more the world he had accepted as natural began to crack. And at the center of that crack stood Lila, brave and quiet, stitching rebellion into beauty. Their meetings under the willow grove grew bolder. One crisp October evening, with the moon rising full and silver over the river, Elias brought something wrapped in brown paper. "I want you to have this," he said, pressing the package into her hands. Inside was a small book, Uncle Tom's Cabin, newly published and already forbidden in many Southern homes. A merchant in Richmond had sold it to him secretly. Layla traced the cover with trembling fingers. "If they find this—" "They won't," he promised. "Read it when you're alone. Then pass it to Mama Ruth, or whoever you trust." Words like these, they changed things. Tears gathered in her eyes, not of fear, but of a fierce, swelling hope. She reached out and touched his cheek, the first time she had ever initiated contact. His skin was warm beneath her palm, and for a heartbeat the world narrowed to just the two of them, the river's song and the rustle of leaves their only witnesses. "I wish," she began, then stopped. "Tell me," he whispered. "I wish we could walk down a road together, free and unafraid. Just once." He covered her hand with his own. "One day, Layla. I swear it." But promises made beneath willows are easily overheard by the wind, and the wind on a plantation carries tales to unwelcome ears. Harlan Brooks had grown uneasy. His son's rides took strange detours. His questions at supper veered toward politics and morality in ways that made the overseer's jaw tighten. One evening, after finding Elias's horse tied near the grove yet again, Harlan followed the faint trail of footprints to the riverbank. He saw nothing that night, but suspicion took root like kudzu. The next day, he confronted his son in the stable. "You've been spending too much time away from your duties, boy. Folks are starting to talk." Elias kept his voice steady as he brushed down his mare. "Just checking the fences, Pop. Making sure everything's secure." Harlan's eyes narrowed. "Fences near the slave quarters? Don't lie to me. I know that look. I wore it once myself, long ago, before I learned better." Elias froze. His father rarely spoke of his own youth. "There was a girl," Harlan continued, voice rough, "pretty as dawn. I thought love could change things. Nearly got us both sold, or worse. Love don't bend iron bars, son. It only gets people hurt." The warning hung heavy between them. Elias wanted to argue, to say the world was shifting, but fear clamped his tongue. That night he lay awake, torn between his growing love for Layla and the terror of what discovery would mean for her most of all. Meanwhile, in the quarters, Layla shared fragments of the book with Mama Ruth and two trusted friends. Jonah, a strong field hand with a gentle heart, and his wife Clara, who sang hymns that carried coded messages. They read by candle stub, passing pages carefully, hearts pounding at every creak of the night. "This woman," Mama Ruth murmured, tracing the words, "she sees us clear, sees our pain." Jonah's voice was low thunder. "If white folks up north feel this way, maybe the time's coming." Layla nodded, folding the pages away. "We keep stitching. We keep listening. When the moment comes, we'll know the path." As the Colonel's birthday drew near, the quilt took shape on Layla's frame, magnificent, intricate, seemingly a tribute to Southern grandeur. Visitors who peeked into the sewing room exclaimed over its beauty. No one noticed the tiny symbols hidden in the borders: a bear's paw print for strength, a drunken path for evasion, a North Star blazing bright. Only Elias saw the full truth when Layla quietly showed him one evening in the grove. "It's a map," she whispered, spreading a corner of the unfinished quilt on the grass under moonlight. "For anyone ready to run. Safe houses marked by friends along the river. Places to hide. Signals to watch for." He stared, awestruck and afraid. "Layla, if they ever realize." "They won't," she said fiercely. "Not unless someone betrays us." Their eyes locked, and in that moment love and danger braided together tighter than any thread. Elias pulled her close, and for the first time their lips met, soft, desperate, tasting of hope and dread. The kiss was brief, stolen, but it sealed something unbreakable between them. Far off in the darkness, a twig snapped. Neither heard it, But someone watching from the shadows did, a figure who slipped away toward the overseer's house, carrying news that would soon shatter the fragile peace of Willow Creek. The quilt was nearly finished. The celebration loomed, and beneath the beauty of Lila's masterpiece, a spark of revolution waited, patient as midnight, for the moment it would be seen by eyes ready to understand. The night before Colonel Hawthorne's birthday celebration, Willow Creek Plantation glowed with lantern light and anticipation. Carriages rolled up the long oak-lined drive, bringing guests in silk finery and polished boots. Laughter spilled from the wide porches of the big house, mingling with the strains of a fiddle played by one of the house musicians. Tables groaned under platters of ham, turkey, sweet potatoes, and pies, while barrels of cider and stronger spirits flowed freely. In the master bedroom, Lila's finished quilt lay draped across the grand four-poster bed, a masterpiece of deep blues and vivid accents that drew gasps from the ladies who were given an early peek. "Exquisite," Mrs. Hawthorne's sister declared, running her gloved fingers over the intricate stitching. "Why, this girl has the touch of an artist." Colonel Hawthorne beamed with pride, as though the talent reflected directly upon him. No one noticed the tiny symbols woven into the borders, or the way certain blocks aligned to form invisible pathways pointing northward. Lila stood quietly in the corner during the unveiling, head bowed, hands folded. Inside, her heart thundered. The quilt was more than decoration now. It was a beacon. That very morning, Jonah had slipped away before dawn with Clara and their two small children, guided by the patterns Layla had explained in hurried whispers the night before. They aimed for a Quaker farm 10 miles upriver, the first safe house marked in thread. If all went well, others would follow. Elias watched the festivities from the edges, a glass of cider untouched in his hand. His eyes sought Layla across the crowded parlor, and when their gazes met for a fleeting second, he saw both triumph and fear in her expression. He wanted to go to her, to whisper that Jonah's escape had not yet been discovered, but too many eyes watched. Elias Brooks, however, watched closest of all. He had spent the evening moving among the overseers and drivers from neighboring plantations, trading stories and drinks, but his mind was elsewhere. 2 nights earlier, a young field hand named Silas, bitter over a recent whipping, had come to him in secret. Silas had seen shadows in the willow grove more than once, had glimpsed the young master and the seamstress together. Jealousy and the promise of favor had loosened Silas's tongue. Harlan had not acted immediately. He wanted proof, so he waited, nursing his suspicion like a slow-burning fuse. As the guests danced a reel in the lamplight, Harlan slipped away to the quarters. He moved silently between the cabins, lantern low, until he reached Mama Ruth's small dwelling. The old woman sat outside on a stool, humming softly as she shelled late peas by moonlight. "Evening, Mama Ruth," he said, voice deceptively mild. She stiffened but kept her eyes on her bowl. "Evening, Mr. Brooks. Fine quilt your girl made. Whole house talking about it." He paused. "Funny thing, some of the hands been whispering about patterns meaning more than pretty designs. You hear anything like that?" Mama Ruth's fingers never faltered. "Just stitches, sir. Nothing more." He stepped closer. "I hope that's true, because if I find out different, if I find out certain folks been filling heads with running notions, there'll be consequences. Severe ones." She met his gaze then, steady and unafraid. "The Lord sees all, Mr. Brooks. Best remember that." Harlan's jaw tightened. He turned away without another word, but the seed of action had taken root. Back at the celebration, the hour grew late. Guests began to depart, carriages rumbling down the drive. Colonel Hawthorne, flushed with drink and pride, clapped Elias on the shoulder. "You've done well helping your father this season, boy. Time you started thinking about your future, perhaps a wife from one of these fine families." Elias forced a smile, his stomach twisting. When the house finally quieted, Layla was sent to clear linens from the guest rooms. Elias found her in the upstairs hallway, arms full of folded sheets. "They're gone," he whispered urgently. "Jonah and Clara." No alarm raised yet. Relief flooded her face, but only for a moment. "Silas saw us," she said quietly. "He told your father." I heard it from one of the kitchen girls. Elias paled. We have to be careful. Just a little longer. Footsteps echoed on the stairs. They sprang apart as Harlan appeared at the landing, eyes narrowing at the sight of them. Boy, he said to Elias, voice low and dangerous. Come with me. No! Elias followed his father out to the porch, the cool night air sharp against his skin. I gave you warning, Harlan began without preamble. I told you what happens when lines get crossed. That girl's been filling heads with poison, and you've been helping her. Pa, you don't understand. I understand plenty. Harlan's hand shot out, gripping Elias's collar. Tomorrow morning, I'm taking that quilt down. I'm going to find every lying stitch she put in it. And if I find what I think I'll find, she'll wish she'd never picked up a needle. Elias's blood ran cold. You can't. Please. I can, and I will. And you'll stand by and watch, or I'll have you tied beside her. Harlan released him roughly. Go to bed. This ends at dawn. Elias stumbled to his room, heart pounding. He could not sleep. As the plantation settled into uneasy silence, he made a decision, one that would change everything. Just before first light, he crept to the quarters. He tapped softly on Mama Ruth's door. She opened it without surprise, as though she had been waiting. Take Layla, he whispered. Get her away tonight. I'll create a distraction, say the curing barn's on fire. While everyone runs there, you slip downriver to the skiff I keep hidden in the reeds. Follow the quilt's path. Mama Ruth studied him in the gray half-light. And you, child? I'll stay. Make sure no one follows right away. Tears glistened in her eyes. The Lord bless you, Elias Brooks. She woke Layla moments later. The young woman emerged wrapped in a shawl, eyes wide with fear and gratitude. Elias pulled her close for one brief, fierce embrace. I love you, he whispered against her hair. Go north. Be free. I'll find you when I can. I love you too, she choked out. Don't let them break you. Then she was gone, vanishing with Mama Ruth into the pre-dawn mist. Elias waited until he heard the distant splash of oars, faint, hurried, before he ran toward the curing barns. He struck flint against steel, touching flame to a pile of dry leaves near the door. Smoke billowed almost instantly, and he shouted at the top of his lungs. Fire! Fire in the barns! The plantation erupted into chaos. Men shouted, bells clanged, buckets clattered as lines formed to the well. Harlan Brooks roared orders, face red in the growing glow. In the confusion, no one noticed the two figures slipping away down the riverbank. By sunrise, the fire was out, damage minor, thanks to quick action. But Harlan's fury was boundless. He stormed to the big house, demanding the quilt be brought down for examination. Colonel Hawthorne, hungover and irritated, agreed. They spread it across the dining table under harsh morning light. Harlan traced the patterns with growing suspicion, pointing out blocks that seemed oddly directional. This ain't just decoration, he growled. This is a map. A runaway map. The colonel's face darkened. Find who's missing. A quick count in the quarters revealed the truth. Layla and Mama Ruth gone. Jonah and Clara had vanished earlier. No one had yet connected the absences. Harlan whirled on Elias. You knew. Elias met his father's gaze steadily. I helped them. The slap came hard and sudden, splitting Elias's lip. Blood trickled down his chin, but he did not flinch. Colonel Hawthorne stepped forward, voice like ice. Lock him in the smokehouse until I decide what to do. And send riders after the runaways. I want them back, alive if possible. That quilt is evidence. We'll make an example. As Elias was dragged away, he caught one last glimpse of the quilt, the beautiful, dangerous masterpiece that had already begun its work. Somewhere downriver, Layla and Mama Ruth were moving toward freedom, carrying its message in their hearts. And in the quarters, those who remained gathered in secret, tracing remembered patterns in the dirt with sticks, whispering of a new path opening. The spark had caught. The revolution hidden in stitches had begun to burn. The James River ran wide and dark under a sky bruised with clouds, carrying Layla and Mama Ruth northward in the small skiff Elias had hidden among the reeds. The current was swift after recent rains, pulling them along with a steady hush that masked the dip of Mama Ruth's paddle. Layla sat in the bow, shawl clutched tight against the chill, her eyes fixed on the shadowy banks sliding past. Every rustle in the underbrush made her heart leap. Dogs, riders, the crack of a rifle. But the night held its secrets close. They had followed the Quilt's coded path from memory, hugged the eastern bank until the three tall pines, then crossed to the western side where a lantern would blink twice from a certain farmhouse window. Jonah and Clara had reached that same safe house days earlier. A whispered message passed back through a trusted peddler confirmed they were already on their way deeper into free soil. "Keep your spirit strong, child," Mama Ruth murmured from the stern. Her voice, though soft, carried the strength of decades endured. "The river's carrying us like it carried so many before. We ain't the first, and we won't be the last." Layla nodded, tears cold on her cheeks. She thought of Elias, his final embrace, the taste of blood on his lip from his father's blow, the fierce love in his gray eyes. Leaving him behind felt like tearing her own heart in two, yet she knew he had sacrificed his safety for hers. One day, she promised the darkness, she would find a way to bring him north too. Hours passed. Dawn began to pale the eastern sky when they spotted the signal. Two quick flashes of light from a low farmhouse set back among willows. Mama Ruth steered the skiff toward a hidden inlet, where strong hands reached out to pull them ashore. A Quaker couple, Abel and Mercy Goodwin, greeted them with quiet urgency, blankets, hot cornmeal mush, and news that riders from Willow Creek had already thundered past on the main road, heading south on a false trail Elias must have planted. "You'll rest here one day," Abel said, his beard white as winter frost. "Then a wagon will take you to Richmond under a load of hay. From there, friends will guide you to Philadelphia." Layla clutched the small bundle she had carried. Inside lay a folded square cut from the edge of the birthday quilt, the only piece she dared take. Its tiny symbols were her talisman now, proof that beauty could be weapon and shield. Back at Willow Creek, the plantation seethed with rage and fear. Colonel Hawthorne posted a reward, $200 for Layla and Mama Ruth, dead or alive, and another 100 for any information leading to other runaways. Patrols scoured the roads, dogs bayed through the swamps, and every enslaved person felt the weight of suspicion settle heavier than ever. Elias remained locked in the smokehouse, wrists bound with rope, a single blanket against the cold dirt floor. Harlan brought him cornbread and water once a day, but spoke only curt commands. The overseer's face was stone, yet his eyes betrayed torment. He had raised his hand against his own son, and the crack in their bond bled silently. On the third morning, Colonel Hawthorne summoned Elias to the big house. The young man was lean and unshaven, clothes soiled, but he held his head high. The quilt lay folded on the dining table like an accusation. "You helped them escape," the colonel said flatly. "You burned my barn to cover it. Do you deny it?" "No, sir," Elias replied, voice steady. "I do not." Harlan stood in the corner, fists clenched. Hawthorne studied Elias for a long moment. "Your father vouches that you're young and foolish, swayed by a pretty face and dangerous ideas. He believes a firm lesson will cure you. I'm inclined to agree, for his sake, not yours. You'll take 20 lashes at sunset, then resume your duties under close watch. Defy me again, and you'll be sold south with the next trader. Is that clear?" Elias swallowed hard but nodded. 20 lashes he could endure if it meant staying near enough to help others. That evening, the plantation gathered in grim silence as Elias was tied to the whipping post. Harlan himself wielded the lash, each stroke falling with measured force, painful enough to satisfy the colonel, yet not cruel enough to maim. Blood striped Elias's back, but he made no sound beyond a sharp intake of breath. In the crowd, faces turned away, yet some eyes burned with new fire. They saw the overseer's son take punishment for helping runaways. The message spread like roots under soil. Afterward, alone in his room with salve burning on his wounds, Elias wept, not from pain, but from relief that Layla was beyond the colonel's reach. A soft tap came at his window near midnight. He opened it to find Isaiah, a trusted stable hand, pressing a folded paper into his hand. "From the quarters," Isaiah whispered. "They say thank you, young master. And they say the quilts speak in still." The note, written in careful charcoal letters by someone taught in secret, read, "More will follow the stars. Your courage lights the way." Elias hid the paper against his heart and slept at last. Weeks slipped by. Winter crept in, frosting the fields and quieting the patrols as rewards went unclaimed. Layla and Mama Ruth reached Philadelphia safely, welcomed into the bustling community of free black families and abolitionists. Layla's skill with needle and thread quickly found work. She began teaching others the old patterns, adding new ones born of her own journey. Word of the Willow Creek quilt spread through underground networks, a masterpiece that had guided souls to freedom and exposed the cruelty of bondage to those who saw its hidden truth. In Richmond, abolitionist printers secretly reproduced sketches of the quilt's patterns, distributing them as signals along the escape routes. Conductors on the Underground Railroad began calling one safe path the Hawthorne Trail, though none knew the full story yet. At Willow Creek, small acts of resistance multiplied. Tools vanished, horses went unlamed at critical moments, food stores mysteriously replenished the quarters. Harlan grew harsher, but cracks appeared even in his resolve. One night, drunk on corn whiskey, he confessed to a fellow overseer that his own son's defiance haunted him. "Boy's got his mother's soft heart, and now it's gonna kill him or me." Elias healed slowly, body and spirit. He moved carefully now, earning back just enough trust to ride out alone again. On those rides, he left subtle signs, scraps of cloth tied to certain trees, marks carved on fence posts, guiding any who dared follow Layla's map. Then came the letter. It arrived in early December, hidden inside a bolt of cloth delivered from Richmond. The merchant, a secret sympathizer, passed it to Isaiah, who slipped it to Elias. The paper was fine, the handwriting elegant yet familiar. "My dearest Elias, by the time you read this, Mama Ruth and I are safe in a city where black folks walk free and speak bold. Jonah and Clara send their love. They have work and a school for the children. I stitch every day, teaching others the patterns that brought us here. Your name is spoken with gratitude in rooms you will never see, yet your courage lives in every escaped soul. I carry our love like a light inside me. One day the chains will break across this land, and I will wait for you under northern stars. Until then, guard your heart and know mine beats with yours. Forever, Layla." Elias read it by candlelight, tears falling onto the page. He pressed it between the pages of the forbidden book he still kept hidden, then burned the envelope in his hearth. Far away in Philadelphia, Layla stood at a window watching snow fall soft and clean over the city. In her hand she held a new quilt block, a single bright star on deep indigo. Around it she began stitching tiny letters only visible up close. E-N-L entwined, a promise woven into cloth. The river had carried her body to freedom. Love had carried her heart back to him. And somewhere between south and north, a quiet revolution grew. One stitch, one escaped soul, one courageous heart at a time. But the colonel's pride was not yet humbled, and Harlan's anger simmered still. Greater trials lay ahead, and the quilt's full message had only begun to unfold. Winter gripped Virginia with iron fingers in the early months of 1853. Frost silvered the fields of Willow Creek, and smoke rose thin and gray from the cabin chimneys in the quarters. The escape of Layla, Mama Ruth, Jonah, and Clara had left a wound that refused to heal. Colonel Hawthorne doubled the patrols, shortened rations as punishment, and posted new rules carved on a board outside the big house. No gatherings after dark, no singing without permission, no teaching of letters. Yet beneath the fear, something stronger stirred. Quiet planning, whispered names of safe houses, memorized patterns from the quilt that lived now only in memory and scattered fragments. Elias moved through his days like a shadow. The scars on his back had healed into pale ridges, but the greater injury lay deeper. He rode the boundaries, checked the tobacco barns, and reported to his father with careful obedience. Harlan watched him constantly, suspicion etched into every glance. Father and son spoke only of work now. The easy companionship of years past had crumbled like dry earth. Yet Elias had not surrendered. On moonless nights he slipped small bundles into the quarters, flint stones, dried meat, scraps of cloth marked with subtle arrows pointing north. He carved tiny stars into fence posts along back trails, signs that those ready to flee would recognize. More than once, a family vanished quietly. An old carpenter and his wife one week, 3 young brothers the next. No dogs caught their scent. No riders brought them back. The Hawthorne Trail, as it was now called in secret networks, grew longer and surer. In Philadelphia, Layla thrived in ways she had never imagined. She lived in a neat brick house shared with other free women, earned good wages altering gowns for wealthy Quaker ladies, and spent evenings teaching sewing classes in the basement of Mother Bethel Church. The square of quilts she had carried south now hung framed on the wall, a relic that visitors touched with reverence. Abolitionists came to hear her story. William Still, the meticulous recorder of escapes, Lucretia Mott, gentle yet fierce, and once, even Frederick Douglass himself, whose deep voice rumbled approval when she described the hidden map stitched under the colonel's own roof. "Your masterpiece has saved dozens already," Still told her one evening, ink staining his fingers as he wrote. "And it will save hundreds more. We are copying the patterns, printing them in pamphlets disguised as sewing instructions. White eyes see only pretty designs. Our people see the road home." Layla's heart ached with every new arrival who spoke of following the Willow Creek stars. She asked each one for news of Elias. But the trail was one way. Messages north were possible, answers south nearly impossible. Still, she stitched his initials into every new teaching quilt, a private vow that love would outlast distance. Back at Willow Creek, tension coiled tighter with each empty cabin. Colonel Hawthorne's temper shortened. He sold Silas, the informer whose jealousy had sparked the first alarm, to a Louisiana cotton planter, a warning to any who thought betrayal brought reward. Harlan drank more in the evenings, staring into the fire as though searching for answers in the flames. One February night, a fierce storm rolled in from the west, wind howling through the pines, rain lashing the roofs like whips. Lightning split the sky, illuminating the plantation in stark flashes. In that chaos, 6 more souls slipped away. 2 women, 3 men, and a girl of 12 who had memorized every symbol Layla once traced in the dirt. By morning, the colonel raged. He summoned Harlan to the big house. "This ends now," Hawthorne thundered, slamming his fist on the desk. "Your boy knows more than he says. I want him questioned, properly. If he's helping them, we'll have the truth out of him." Harlan's face went ashen. "Colonel, he took his punishment. He's been dutiful since." "Dutiful?" Hawthorne sneered. "Half my people gone in 4 months, and no trace? Someone's guiding them. Riders say there's marks on trees, cloth ties, signals. Who else knows the land like your son?" Harlan left the house with shoulders bowed, the weight of loyalty to master and fatherhood tearing him apart. That afternoon, he found Elias in the stable, mending harness. "Pack a bag," Harlan said quietly. "Light one. You're leaving tonight." Elias looked up, startled. "Pa, I've arranged for you to go to my cousin in Charleston, overseer job on his rice plantation. Colonel thinks it's punishment, getting you away from bad influences. Truth is," Harlan's voice cracked, "truth is I can't watch him break you, or make me do it." Elias set down the leather strap. "I won't go. Not while people still need help." Harlan stepped close, eyes fierce. "You listen to me, boy. I lost one woman I loved to this cursed place long ago. I won't lose my son, too. You go south, you stay alive. When things cool, maybe you come back, or maybe you head north yourself. But you don't stay here to die for a cause that'll take years to win." For the first time in months, Elias saw his father clearly, the grief long buried, the regret, the love twisted by a cruel world. He embraced the older man fiercely, both of them trembling. "I'll go," Elias whispered, "but not to Charleston." That night, under cover of lingering storm clouds, Elias slipped away on his favorite mare. He left a note for Harlan. "Forgive me. I choose the road Layla walks. One day I'll send for you too, if you'll come." He rode north, following back trails and hidden streams, avoiding main roads where patrols still hunted runaways. For 3 weeks he traveled by night, sleeping in barns of secret sympathizers, guided by quilt signs now familiar as breath. Hunger gnawed, cold bit deep, but hope burned brighter with every mile. In Richmond, a conductor recognized the description Layla had circulated: tall young white man with gray eyes and faint whip scars. He was hidden in a wagon bound for Washington, then ferried across the Potomac under barrels of apples. At last, on a raw March morning, Elias stepped onto free soil in Philadelphia. Exhausted, bearded, thinner than when he left Virginia, he asked the first black freeman he met for directions to Mother Bethel Church. Word spread quickly. By evening, Layla was summoned from her sewing circle. She entered the meeting room trembling, afraid to believe the whispers. There he stood, Elias, travel-stained but alive, eyes shining with the same love she carried across months and miles. She ran to him without a word. He caught her, lifting her off the ground as they clung together, tears mingling on their cheeks. Around them, the room filled with quiet rejoicing, hands clasped, hymns begun soft and low. Later, alone in a small upstairs room lit by a single lamp, they spoke at last. "I dreamed of you every night," Layla whispered, tracing the new lines on his face. "And I followed your stars," he answered, kissing her fingertips. "They led me home." They married quietly the following Sunday, surrounded by new friends who understood the miracle of their reunion. Elias found work as a clerk in an abolitionist print shop, using his careful hand to copy maps and pamphlets. Layla continued teaching, and together they designed new quilt patterns, some for beauty, others carrying ever-evolving codes as the Underground Railroad grew. News traveled slowly south. When it reached Willow Creek months later, carried by a peddler, Harlan Brooks sat alone on his porch and wept, for loss, for pride, for the son who had chosen courage over comfort. The next season, when spring returned green to the fields, Harlan quietly began leaving gates unlatched and dogs unchained on certain nights. More souls followed the stars north. Colonel Hawthorne's pride cracked further with each empty cabin. By 1854, Willow Creek's workforce had dwindled so sharply that he sold parcels of land to pay debts. The great quilt, once his birthday triumph, hung folded in an attic trunk, its dangerous beauty locked away, yet its message free and spreading. The revolution sparked in stitches had become a flame no master could extinguish. And in Philadelphia, beneath northern skies bright with real and woven stars, Elias and Layla built a life stitched together with love stronger than any chain ever forged. An enslaved artisan's masterpiece. Its hidden message sparks a revolution. Part 6. Echoes through time. Years flowed like the James River itself, steady and unstoppable. The nation edged closer to the precipice so many had long foreseen. In 1861, when Fort Sumter fell and the war between the states erupted, Elias and Lila Brooks stood on the roof of their Philadelphia row home, watching fireworks of celebration light the sky, fireworks for a union now committed, at last, to ending slavery. Elias had become a respected agent for the Underground Railroad in the final years before the war, guiding hundreds across borders and rivers. Layla's quilts hung in abolition halls as symbols of resistance. One even traveled to England with Harriet Tubman on a speaking tour, raising funds and hearts. Their home became a station once more, sheltering soldiers of the United States colored troops and nurses bound for the front. Their children, 3 now, 2 boys with Elias's gray eyes and a girl with Layla's warm smile and skillful fingers, grew up hearing the story whispered like a sacred tale. How a forbidden love and a single quilt sparked a quiet revolution that helped crack the foundation of bondage. In Virginia, Willow Creek Plantation crumbled. Colonel Hawthorne, aging and embittered, lost more land to taxes and poor harvests. When Union troops marched through in 1864, the remaining enslaved people walked away without looking back, carrying only what they could bundle in cloths that echoed old patterns. Harlan Brooks, gray-haired and broken by years of regret, did not stop them. He sat on the porch of his empty house and watched them go, then rode north himself weeks later. He found Elias and Lila in Philadelphia, hat in hand, voice trembling. "I was wrong," he said simply on their doorstep. "About everything." Lila embraced him first, tears falling. Elias followed. Harlan lived with them the rest of his days. A quiet grandfather who taught the children to ride and never spoke of whips or chains again. The war ended in April 1865. News of Appomattox reached Philadelphia amid church bells and shouting in the streets. Lila and Elias walked arm in arm through crowds of rejoicing black families, many of whom pressed forward to touch Lila's sleeve or shake Elias's hand. Strangers who knew their story, who had followed the stars they had stitched and marked years before. But the greatest twist, the one that would carry their names beyond their lifetimes, came decades later. In 1892, long after Colonel Hawthorne's death, Willow Creek was sold to settle debts. The new owners, a northern industrial family seeking a summer estate, began renovations on the decaying big house. Workmen clearing the attic discovered a large trunk locked with rust. Inside, wrapped in yellowed linen, lay the original birthday quilt, magnificent still, its colors only slightly faded. The new mistress of the house, a woman educated in history and sympathetic to the cause of remembrance, recognized something unusual in the patterns. She invited scholars from the newly founded Hampton Institute to examine it. There, under careful study, the hidden symbols were revealed at last. The maps, the safe houses, the warnings and directions that had guided dozens, perhaps hundreds, to freedom. The quilt was photographed, written about in newspapers, and eventually donated to the Smithsonian Institution in Washington, where it was displayed with a plaque that read, "The Willow Creek Freedom Quilt, created by Lila Monroe Brooks, 1852, with courage and assistance from Elias Brooks, a masterpiece of beauty and defiance that helped light the path to liberty for many during America's darkest hours." Visitors stood before it in silence, school children, veterans, descendants of the enslaved and of enslavers alike. Some wept. Some traced the tiny knots with wondering fingers through the glass. Lila and Elias, now in their 60s, silver-haired and content, traveled to Washington by train to see it one final time. They stood hand in hand before the case, the quilt glowing softly under museum lights. "I never thought the Colonel's birthday gift would end up here," Elias murmured, a smile tugging at his lips. Lila leaned her head on his shoulder. Every stitch was a prayer, and every prayer was answered, not just for us, but for all who came after. Their grandchildren, wide-eyed beside them, listened as the elderly couple told the story once more, of willow groves and secret kisses, of fire and flight, of love that refused to bow to chains. In the years that followed, the quilt became one of the most treasured artifacts of the Underground Railroad era. Books were written, lectures given, songs composed. Quilting circles across the country revived the old patterns, teaching new generations the language of resistance hidden in cloth. Lila passed peacefully in 1908, surrounded by family and stacks of unfinished quilts. Elias followed 2 years later, holding the small square she had carried north, the one with their entwined initials, against his heart. Their descendants kept the tradition alive. Great-granddaughters became artists and historians. A great-great-grandson founded a museum in Philadelphia dedicated to freedom quilts. And every year, on Juneteenth, a new quilt was hung in the family home, carrying forward patterns both beautiful and brave. The revolution sparked by an enslaved artisan's masterpiece did not end with emancipation. It lived in every soul who learned that even under the harshest oppression, creativity could be courage, love could be rebellion, and a single act of defiance could echo through centuries. For in the end, the hidden message of Lila's quilt was simple and eternal. Freedom is worth everything. Love is stronger than fear. And beauty, woven with truth, can change the world.